Welcome back. You're tuned in for a deep dive, and today we're really getting into something important, especially if you're keeping track for UPSC prep.
Absolutely. It's about the recent buzz around Vice-President Dhankhar's comments on the Indian judiciary.
Right, we're talking judicial activism, transparency, its constitutional role. A lot to unpack.
And we're drawing heavily from recent reporting, particularly detailed accounts in The Hindu, which covered the VP's remarks, and the expert takes quite well.
Our mission today, not just what was said, but why it matters. We want to pull out the core issues, look at the different sides.
And figure out the key takeaways for understanding, how our constitutional system ticks. It's about the dynamics.
Okay, let's dive in. The spark was the vice president's remarks. He laid out, 5 main points of concern?
That's right. First off, he mentioned a lack of transparency in the judiciary's internal inquiries.
He brought up that specific incident with the Delhi High Court judge.
Exactly. And this transparency point, it really hits at the heart of public trust, doesn't it?
Awesome.
Well, if there are allegations, say, of misconduct, and the process to look into them is opaque, people start getting skeptical.
Which isn't good for the judiciary's standing.
Definitely not. It can erode confidence, maybe even affect how readily people accept court orders. It potentially undermines the rule of law itself.
So the thinking is a more open mechanism could help build that trust back up.
Precisely. Many legal experts seem to lean that way, institutionalize something clear, something transparent.
Okay, second point. He questioned the Supreme Court giving timelines to governors and the president.
Yeah, timelines for acting on state legislation, using that writ of mandamus.
And the issue there is separation of powers.
That seems to be the core concern, yes. Our Constitution sets up these different branches, legislature, executive, judiciary, with distinct roles, partly to balance power. So when the court directs a governor or president on timing, the question arises, is the judiciary sort of blurring those lines, maybe stepping into the executive's functions a bit too much?
Got it. Then the third point was about accountability.
Right. He highlighted what he sees as an accountability deficit in the judiciary compared to, say, the executive or the legislature.
Because politicians face elections.
Right.
Direct accountability to the people.
Exactly. The judiciary's accountability works differently. You've got internal checks, the impeachment process, which is, let's be honest, rarely used.
And public scrutiny of their judgments.
Yes. So the VP's comments kind of force us to ask, are these existing mechanisms enough? Do they maintain public faith effectively? It's a valid question to discuss.
Okay, fourth. This one's about the Constitution benches.
Right.
Article 145(3).
The suggestion was to maybe rethink the minimum size, currently 5 judges, for constitutional matters.
Because the Supreme Court itself is much bigger now than when that rule was made.
That's the argument. The court's strength has increased significantly.
So bigger court, maybe bigger benches needed?
Well, that's the surface logic. But then you hit practical realities. The court has a huge caseload, right?
Yeah, the backlog is always a topic.
So even with more judges overall, coordinating and assembling larger benches for every constitutional case could be logistically challenging. It might actually slow things down.
So the current minimum might still be the most practical way to handle the volume.
It's definitely an argument you hear, balancing thoroughness with, actually getting cases decided.
And the final point. Article 142.
Yes. Article 142. The concern expressed was about the Supreme Court's sweeping powers under this article and how that might impact representative democracy.
Remind us what Article 142 does again.
It's quite unique. It basically empowers the Supreme Court to pass any order necessary to do complete justice in a case before it.
Even if there isn't a specific law covering the situation.
That's the idea. It's meant to fill gaps, ensure fairness when existing laws fall short, but...
Its breadth is the issue.
Exactly. Because the power is so broad, it creates this inherent tension with the legislature's role, which is, making the laws in the first place. This is often where the term judicial activism comes up.
And we've certainly seen Article 142 used in some major cases.
Oh, absolutely. Landmark stuff. Think about the Bhopal gas tragedy compensation back in '89.
Right. And the Vishaka guidelines on sexual harassment at the workplace. That was before the actual legislation came in.
Precisely. Also, the cancellation of those illegal coal block allocations in 2014.
More recently, granting permanent commission to women officers in the armed forces.
Yes, that was 2024. And even guidelines on unlawful demolitions, also quite recent.
So these are all examples of the judiciary stepping in, arguably where other branches hadn't acted sufficiently.
You could definitely frame it that way. The judiciary acting to ensure justice or address pressing societal issues when maybe the legislative or executive response was seen as lacking or delayed.
But the VP's point is about the potential downsides of this activism.
It seems so. The concern is about balancing this proactive judicial role, even when well-intentioned, with the core principles of separation of powers and the mandate given to elected representatives. It's a fine line.
Now, it's fair to say these comments haven't landed quietly. There have been pretty varied reactions, haven't there?
Very much so. Across political lines, legal circles, you see a split.
Some see it as perhaps an overreach, coming from the vice president's office.
That's one perspective, yes. That such criticism from a high constitutional functionary might seem inappropriate or risk undermining judicial independence.
But others see it differently.
Right. Others view it as necessary criticism, maybe reflecting genuine concerns held by some segment of the public about judicial functioning or accountability.
It really highlights that delicate balance again.
It does. That constant tension in our system between needing an independent judiciary free from pressure and also needing all institutions, including the judiciary, to be accountable and transparent in appropriate ways.
Let's circle back to that transparency issue in judicial inquiries. You mentioned experts suggesting changes.
Yeah, it seems to be a recurring theme. That lack of public visibility into how allegations against judges are handled, it just fuels concern.
So the suggestion is for the CJI, the Chief Justice of India, to maybe institutionalize a clearer process.
That's the idea floated by some experts, yeah. Something more formalized, more transparent. The argument is that this could significantly boost public trust.
Because trust is fundamental.
It's the bedrock, really. A judiciary perceived as fair and impartial, even when scrutinizing itself, holds much stronger authority.
Okay, now what about the court setting timelines for the president and governors? You mentioned the separation of powers concern, but the court didn't just invent this power, did it?
No, not at all. The power of judicial review itself, the court's ability to examine executive and legislative actions, is considered part of the Constitution's basic structure. That's well-established doctrine.
So the court can review these actions?
Yes, and specifically on timelines, there are precedents. Previous court rulings have touched on this, dealing with undue delay. Plus, there are even government guidelines. Yeah, like a Home Ministry Office memorandum from 2016, which sort of provides a framework suggesting timely action is expected in these constitutional processes. The court often refers to such things when intervening.
So there's a legal basis. It's not completely out of the blue.
There's definitely a constitutional and legal rationale the court relies on. The debate is more about the extent and manner of judicial intervention in the roles of other high offices.
Understood. And revisiting the Constitution bench size, Article 145(3), the practical argument against routinely larger benches was logistics and caseload.
Correct. While the court is larger, the sheer volume of cases means that consistently convening benches larger than the current minimum of 5 for constitutional questions could create significant bottlenecks.
So efficiency becomes a major factor.
It has to be. Ensuring timely justice is also a crucial part of the judicial function. So the current minimum might just be the pragmatic optimum, balancing depth of consideration with the need for speed.
This whole discussion really seems to boil down to navigating India's unique constitutional setup, doesn't it?
Yeah.
This blend of powers.
It really does. We don't have pure parliamentary sovereignty like the UK, nor pure judicial supremacy like, say, the US model in some respects. It's a hybrid.
A unique synthesis.
Exactly. Parliament has vast legislative power, but the judiciary, through judicial review, acts as the ultimate interpreter and guardian of the Constitution. It can scrutinize laws and actions.
And that power of judicial review is fundamental to ensuring constitutional supremacy.
Absolutely. It's the mechanism that ensures everything done by the legislature and executive stays within the boundaries set by the Constitution. This interplay is a defining feature of our democracy.
So when we talk about reforms, like maybe revisiting the judicial appointments process.
Yes, discussions around things like a National Judicial Appointments Commission, perhaps in a reformed structure, often come up in this context. The goal usually cited is enhancing transparency and maybe making appointments more inclusive.
But the caution is always about independence.
That's the critical counterweight. Any reform, however well-intentioned towards transparency or accountability, must be carefully designed so it doesn't compromise the fundamental independence of the judiciary. That independence is vital for it to perform its role as constitutional guardian without fear or favor.
Okay, so wrapping this up, we've explored these inherent tensions, haven't we? Accountability versus independence, transparency versus the need for judicial space, the reach of judicial review.
Definitely. These aren't easy questions with simple answers. They involve balancing fundamental constitutional values.
And these discussions are crucial for how our democracy actually functions day to day, how power is balanced.
Immensely important. They shape the relationship between the judiciary, the government, and the people.
So perhaps a final thought for our listeners to mull over.
How about this? Considering everything we've discussed, how can India best strengthen its democratic framework? How do we foster a judiciary that is both effectively transparent and accountable and fiercely independent so it can truly function as the guardian of the Constitution?
That's a great question to reflect on, weighing all the arguments.
Indeed.
And for those of you preparing for the UPSC exams, understanding these complex dynamics, the separation of powers, judicial review, activism, accountability mechanisms, it's absolutely vital. This is core material for Indian polity, constitutional law, and certainly current affairs.
This topic touches on so many key areas of the syllabus.
Exactly. Consider this part of your daily UPSC mains current affairs deep dive. And remember its relevance for prelims too. We really hope this discussion shed some light on this complex and ongoing debate.
Hope it was useful.
If you found this deep dive helpful, please do hit like, subscribe for more, and definitely drop a comment if you have questions or want us to explore something further.
We look forward to hearing from you.
And just to reiterate, our main source for unpacking this topic today was reporting from The Hindu. Thanks for tuning in.